Well, without a free way of creating information, without free content creation tools, it's hard to guarantee free knowledge. The relationship between the two comes from the incentives that people have for storing the storage formats for data. So if I have a proprietary, a non-free piece of software, my goal is to keep people using it. And one of the primary ways of doing that is ensuring that when you save your information using my software, it can only be opened again with my software. And that when I release a new version of my software, I force you to upgrade by making the new file format incompatible. So what happens as users is we use this non-free proprietary technology and we no longer own our data. We no longer own our information. And this means that knowledge simply cannot be free. It also means that people that can't have access to the software, either for political reasons or economic reasons, are locked out. With free software, a couple of things happen. Number one, we're not incentivated. We have no reason to lock people in with a proprietary format. In fact, quite the opposite. We actually want the formats open. We can't hide them because you can actually see the code. We actually want the formats open because in free software, we grow and the projects benefit as our user base grows. So we're user-oriented and we need to make the users happy. One of the things that makes people happy is having access to their own information on their terms. They decide when to upgrade. They decide which software to use. And when there is a free implementation, if someone decides, well, we're going to close it up, we are going to do something that isn't in the best interest of the users, well then another group of people, perhaps the users themselves, can take that technology for themselves and do what's called a fork. They can basically make a copy of the technology and continue to produce the free version of it, the free software version of it. So it's impossible for someone to suddenly say, no, you're not allowed access to this information. We're going to put a technological barrier between you and your knowledge. So free software ensures that we have access to information today, tomorrow, and the next day, and it makes sure that everybody, regardless of what your political or economic status is, has access to the tools to both read and write it. I think it's really interesting that companies and governments today have documents that are only 8, 9 years old that they can't open anymore because they use proprietary software to write it, and the companies no longer support that software. And they simply can't access that data. They have to spend large amounts of money, and many times the data just disappears. At the same time, we have documents that are hundreds of years old, right? Our constitutions, maps that people drew when they first came to a country or a continent. We can still read these hundreds of years old documents, but not something 5 years old. There's something very wrong with this. And what's going to happen if we're not careful is we're going to end up with this blind spot. We're going to have all of this documentation of human history until computers. And then there's going to be this time when we're not going to be able to read or see anything. And that's the importance of free knowledge, right? Is for future generations. It's not just us now. It's important today because everybody deserves access to certain types of information, especially public information. But this is for future generations too. This is for 25, 50, 100, 500 years down the road, so we can actually see where we've been. If we lose that perspective, if we can't see where we've been, we have no way of charting a way forward. History is our teacher, right? And that's one of the really big dangers of proprietary software that leads to this blind spot in our history. So, being from Canada, I obviously know just a little bit about Celipar, but it's my second time in Brazil, and what fascinates me with projects like Celipar, where it's a government-run or government company that's actually looking to take the concepts of freedom and free embodied in free knowledge or free software and help bridge that gap to the public. This is really rather unique to this part of the world. There's very few other places in the world that are doing this kind of work. And I think it shows because you look around in Brazil, and as an example of one South American country that's really doing well with free software, the adoption rates are huge compared to other places in the world. We see it on desktops all over the place. We see it on laptops. We see it on servers. We see it in infrastructure. And I think this is directly because we have, in Brazil, you have both private interests that are working to do, through a capitalist model. You have community just doing it because, but you also have the government and public institutions involved. They play a very vital role in getting that information out and supporting the spread and dissemination of free knowledge. And it's directly reflected in the usage of free software in Brazil.